And joining us out of Indiana in the States is Mr. E. Michael Jones, editor of Culture Wars online magazine. And hello there, Mr. E. Michael Jones, and thanks for joining us here on Press TV's Top 5, sir. Now, Mr. Jones, it seems Russia has been doing everything it can to get the U.S. to make this distinction between terrorists and so-called moderate opposition. Why do you think Washington has been so reluctant or has been dragging its feet to get this done?
Well, the interesting thing about this offer on the part of the Russians to have a moratorium on bombing is that it allowed an offensive. There's currently an offensive going on in Aleppo, exploiting this opportunity offered by the Russians. And the groups that are involved in it, according to the New York Times, 11 of the 20 groups that are involved in fighting now this offensive to break the siege on Aleppo, 11 of them have been vetted by the CIA as moderate. So obviously this is a fiction. There's no distinction here between these groups. These groups are there to topple the government. And the United States declaring that some are good and some are bad is totally meaningless. And every time there's a ceasefire, they use this as the opportunity to restart one of their offensives. And this is what's happening right now.
And I'd like to get into these so-called moderate rebels who are there in Syria, just moderately beheading a 9-year-old boy a couple months ago. They're moderately raping women, carrying out suicide bombings, civilian massacres, moderately robbing, looting, and doing whatever they can to try to reach their objective. And, you know, it seems that Russia and Damascus, who are trying to, fight these militants there, are having the West try to shackle their arms at every turn. Your thoughts, and you help us make sense of this.
Well, I think the term moderate, it means that the Russians and the Syrian government should not be allowed to attack them. I think that's what that means. If there are moderate groups there, then you're not allowed to attack them, so therefore you have to pull back. Well, the people on the ground don't see any distinction. They're all working together to overthrow the government. The New York Times is admitting this now. The people they're quoting, they're all admitting this now. So why should the Russians be held to a fiction that the United States government doesn't believe in?
And do you believe that there is more to this story, that perhaps some of the pause in these airstrikes is maybe perhaps due to the new sanctions and threats of war crime charges that the West has leveled against Moscow and Damascus to try to further shackle their hands in this offensive?
No, I don't think that's the case. The Russians have already sent their fleet. The fleet is on its way to Syria right now. They are planning, they're giving them an opportunity to get out. They're giving the civilians an opportunity to get out. But I think that once the fleet is in place, once they land in Syria, I think you're going to see a renewed offensive. And the problem is that the rebels are preventing the civilians from leaving. The rebels are using these people as human shields because they know it's the only thing that's protecting them from the Russian Air Force.
And that is a war crime, and these so-called moderate rebels, another moderate war tactic that they're using, which is internationally outlawed. Thank you, Mr. E. Michael Jones, for your input, sir. Editor of Culture Wars online magazine, joining us out of Indiana.